When you hear the name Thorin Oakenshield, what comes to mind? Many remember him as the stubborn, proud, and ultimately greedy dwarf who nearly started a devastating war over a pile of gold. They see a king who fell victim to dragon sickness and locked himself behind a wall of stone. But to reduce Thorin to his darkest moments is to completely misunderstand his character. Thorin's story is not a simple tale of greed. It is a crushing, lifelong tragedy of exile, the desperate weight of leadership, and a king who sacrificed his own soul so his people could have a home. Today, we are going to explore the complete, brutal, and heartbreaking history of Thorin Oakenshield, the last king under the mountain.
To understand Thorin's immense pride and deep paranoia, you have to understand what he lost. Thorin was born in the year 2746 of the Third Age, into the ultimate royal privilege. He was a prince of the House of Durin, the most ancient and noble of the seven fathers of the Dwarves. He grew up in Erebor, the Lonely Mountain, during its golden age. The halls were filled with the light of the Arkenstone, the music of harps, and unimaginable wealth.
But when Thorin was just a young dwarf, only 24 years old, the apocalypse arrived. Smaug, the greatest dragon of the Third Age, descended from the north in a hurricane of fire. The dragon did not just steal their gold, he committed genocide. Thorin survived, but he had to watch his home burn, his people get slaughtered. And his proud grandfather King Thror and his father Thrain run for their lives with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Overnight, the royal house of Durin went from the richest kings in the world to homeless, starving beggars wandering the wilderness. This trauma of sudden, absolute loss defined Thorin's entire existence. While the elves sat in their immortal, magical forests, the dwarves of Erebor were forced to work as lowly blacksmiths and coal miners in the villages of men just to put food in their mouths. Thorin had to watch his people suffer the humiliation of extreme poverty. But the tragedy of his family was only just beginning. The loss of Erebor drove Thorin's grandfather, Thror, to absolute madness. Desperate and broken, the old king wandered into the ancient, ruined dwarven realm of Moria, which was now swarming with orcs. He was captured by the massive orc chieftain Azog. Azog did not just kill the old king, he beheaded him, branded his own name onto Thror's forehead, and threw his body down the steps, tossing a small bag of coins at the weeping dwarven companion who survived. When Thorin's father, Thrain, heard this news, he sat in absolute, terrifying silence for 7 days. Then he stood up and declared the War of the Dwarves and Orcs.
This was not a glorious, cinematic adventure. It was a merciless, brutal war of extermination that lasted for 3 years. The dwarves hunted down every orc stronghold in the Misty Mountains, culminating in the Battle of Azanulbizar, fought right outside the gates of Moria. This is the battle where Thorin truly became a legend. He was only 53, very young for a dwarf fighting in the vanguard of the army.
During the bloody chaos, Thorin's shield cracked and broke. Unarmed on his left side, he did not retreat. Instead, he grabbed a massive shattered branch of an oak tree with his bare hands, using it as both a club and a shield to block the blows of his enemies. On that day, in the mud and the blood, he earned the name that would echo through history, Oakenshield.
The dwarves won the battle, but it was a devastating Pyrrhic victory. So many dwarves died that they could not even bury their dead. They had to burn them in massive pyres. When they looked at the open gates of Moria, they realized they could not reclaim it. Durin's bane, the Balrog, was still waiting in the dark. So, Thorin gathered the surviving broken remnants of his people and led them far away to the west, to the Blue Mountains. For decades, Thorin ruled as a king in exile, and this is where we see his true greatness. He did not sit around feeling sorry for himself. He worked to forge. He traded with men. He slowly, painstakingly rebuilt a life for his people. The dwarves of the Blue Mountains grew relatively prosperous again, but Thorin never smiled. The ashes of his grandfather, the disappearance of his father, who was later captured by Sauron and tortured to death in the dungeons of Dol Guldur, and the memory of the dragon haunted him every single night. The gold of Erebor was not just money to Thorin. It was his heritage. It was the graves of his ancestors. It was the honor of his people. Almost a century later, a fateful chance meeting changed the history of Middle-earth. Thorin was traveling through Bree when he met Gandalf the Grey. Gandalf knew that Sauron was secretly returning to power, and he was terrified that the Dark Lord would use Smaug the dragon to destroy the North. Thorin, meanwhile, just wanted his home back. Together, they formed a desperate, almost suicidal plan. 13 dwarves and 1 hobbit burglar would march to the Lonely Mountain. The quest of Erebor was a nightmare. Thorin had to lead his small company through trolls, goblins, giant spiders, and starvation. And then, he had to face the Elven King, Thranduil. Remember the history here. When Erebor fell to the dragon, Thranduil and his army refused to help. To Thorin, the elves had watched his people burn and turned their backs. So, when Thranduil locked Thorin in his dungeons and demanded a share of the treasure, Thorin's stubborn refusal was not just greed. It was a deep, historical resentment. He would rather rot in an elven cell than give a single coin to the people who abandoned his family. Eventually, thanks to Bilbo Baggins, they reached the mountain. The dragon was killed by Bard the Bowman. But when Thorin finally walked into the treasure hoard of Erebor, the final tragedy of his life began. The gold of Erebor was cursed. It was tainted by the long magical presence of the dragon, and Thorin's family already had a genetic vulnerability to the dragon sickness, the same overwhelming greed that drove his grandfather mad. As Thorin looked at the massive mountains of gold, the trauma of a lifetime of poverty, exile, and humiliation crashed down on him. His mind broke. He became paranoid, believing everyone was trying to steal his birthright. When the armies of men and elves arrived at his gates, demanding a portion of the gold to rebuild the destroyed town of Esgaroth, the old Thorin, the noble king of the Blue Mountains, might have listened. But the sick, paranoid Thorin looked at them and saw only thieves trying to steal the home he had spent his entire life bleeding for. He built a wall of stone. He chose war over compromise. Even Bilbo, the hobbit he had grown to respect, betrayed him by giving the Arkenstone to the enemy to force a peace treaty. For Thorin, this was the ultimate breaking point. He had been betrayed by the world, and now he was betrayed by his own burglar. He was completely alone in his madness. But Thorin Oakenshield was not destined to die a villain. When the true enemy arrived, the massive goblin and warg army from the Misty Mountains, the Battle of 5 Armies began. Thorin heard the sounds of his cousins dying outside the mountain. The sickness in his mind fought against the true noble heart of the Dwarven king. And the king won. Thorin threw down the stone wall he had built. He did not charge out for gold or treasure. He charged out to save his people. Wearing no armor, wielding his sword Deathbiter, Thorin Oakenshield crashed into the enemy lines like a storm. He fought his way through the goblin bodyguard, aiming straight for their commander, Bolg. In the cinematic adaptation, this is his final epic duel with Azog the Defiler. But in both the book and the movie, the result is the same. Thorin fought with the fury of a king who had finally found his home, and he was mortally wounded in the process. After the battle was won, as he lay dying in a tent, he called for Bilbo Baggins. This final scene is one of the most beautiful and heartbreaking in all of Tolkien's works. The dragon's sickness was gone. The madness had faded. The proud, stubborn king looked at the little hobbit and asked for forgiveness. Thorin's final words were the ultimate realization of a life spent chasing the wrong things. If more of us valued food and cheer and song above hoarded gold, it would be a merrier world. But sad or merry, I must leave it now. Farewell. Thorin Oakenshield did not live to sit on the throne of Erebor. He did not get to enjoy the wealth he fought his whole life to reclaim. But because of his absolute refusal to give up, because of his immense sacrifice, the dragon was dead. The Doblin army was crushed. The dwarven kingdom of Erebor was restored, and his cousin Dane Ironfoot became a great and wise king. Thorin was buried deep under the mountain, with the Arkenstone placed upon his chest, and his elven sword Orcarist laid upon his tomb. He was a flawed man. He was proud, he was angry, and he made terrible mistakes. But he was also a survivor who carried the impossible weight of a broken race on his shoulders. He was the king in exile who brought his people home.